What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about Doom: The Dark Ages yet again and just kind of go off, just kind of talk about how good this game looks and, some of the big changes. We've actually heard quite a bit about this game even after they showed it off at the Xbox Developer Direct. So I kind of want to talk about some of those things as well. I mean, you got collector's editions that just look freaking unbelievable. You have things like the no multiplayer. So that was actually something that I didn't know. I was watching the Developer Direct. I watched it a few hours later. They're going through it. Sounds good. Everything's okay. Actually, everything's better than okay. And then later that night, I actually saw a tweet that said, oh, they're not doing multiplayer. And now look, I don't think most people even care, to be honest with you. I played the multiplayer actually quite an okay amount with Doom Eternal, okay, specifically Doom Eternal. And I actually really liked it. I think it was a lot of fun, but I totally understand, okay, if they want to focus, and that's what they say, right? They're focusing on that single player. It's going to be, I believe they said, like bigger, right? Whether it's longer, whether it's just more stuff in general, it's meatier. And because of that, they're not doing the multiplayer. I think they said they decided on that very, very early in the development process that they weren't going to have multiplayer. So, honestly, it will be something that I miss a little bit. I actually played it with a close friend of mine, Doom Eternal's multiplayer. So that was something that, I would have played. I guess that's kind of the way of saying it, right? If multiplayer was in the game, I absolutely would have checked it out. Therefore, it not being there means something is kind of missing a little bit, but at the same time, I mean, I am here for what they're going to give me, okay? I'm here for the base game. Now, what I really want to focus on and spend a little bit of time on in this video is when they talk about the type of game, right? The kind of the gameplay mechanics, right? And the structure of this game. So I've actually seen this floating around because it was during the developer direct, but they had maybe a 20-second span where they kind of summarized what each Doom game has been, okay? And I'm only, I guess, Doom 2016 onwards, okay? So they talk about Doom 2016 being that run and gun kind of thing. Now, I've always actually preferred Eternal, but I replayed Doom 2016 last year, and I freaking love it, okay? I mean, there is not a bad game, and I think they're both, honestly, very elite games. But yeah, their structure is different. Doom 1 is more about just running around, non-stop motion, right? Whereas Doom Eternal is kind of about, like, that verticality, right? A lot of, like, grappling and jumping around. And to be honest with you, the multiplayer actually kind of followed that, right? A lot of different paths you can take to, like, hide from the enemy, get behind them, get above them, get below them, whatever the situation might be. So that was about kind of, exploring the map, right? It was kind of introduced in Doom 2016 where it's like, okay, we're going to have some different levels to it, but generally it's moving around, it's dodging, it's very fast. And then again, Eternal was, kind of following that, but also, okay, well, let's add jumping, let's add that in the air kind of stuff, right? So they talk about the Dark Ages, and I do think it's going to take like a second to get used to. And I say that honestly kind of literally because it does, even though we're not the ones playing it, it does feel a little bit different. I say feel, I mean, I guess looks, right? Because things feel slower, things look slower. I mean, they actually talked about in the direct, right? Like the projectiles of the enemies, even they are kind of slower, right? Because you are. So they want to bring back that strafing. They want to bring back, just, I mean, kind of, I guess in a way, a little bit like Doom 2016, where if you noticed in the gameplay, you're not jumping, you're not going crazy, with verticality, you're kind of staying on the ground level. It seems slower, right? It seems kind of more powerful. It's about picking that green blast to send back, right? Like picking that moment to actually parry back. And I was not kidding, I said about that 1 second thing. I have a lot of confidence, in this game. I think it's going to hook me immediately. And I think the style of gameplay is just going to, you're going to be required to play it a certain way, but it's just immediately going to hook onto you. Just like Doom 2016, just like Doom Eternal. So I'm not really worried about that. It's just, seeing it after playing 2016, and actually within the next like 2 weeks, I'm going to be replaying Doom Eternal, so that should be fun. I just feel, okay, picking the right beam to deflect back, right? Like that was a big part of the showcase, or, they use their shield a lot, throwing the shield and kind of just having that like leave its impact on the enemy and then kind of firing at it from the side or whatever. It feels heavier. It feels a little bit more almost tactical, if you want to. I mean, I guess all of the games are tactical in a way, but it feels tactical in the sense of you got to know when to block, you got to know when to like Captain America throw your shield, you got to know when to parry, which is the right block blast to kind of parry back an enemy. It does feel, or does, again, I keep saying it, it does look a little bit different. But at the same time, I mean, like, I'm putting this in a video where I'm talking very positively about it. I am impressed. Like, they have to think of new things. Like, you have to keep pushing this game forward, right? So, I mean, would I have accepted a Doom Eternal 2, in terms of like the feel? 100%. I mean, I'll take like 30 more hours of that game, but they're trying something new. And I will say this kind of leads me into, well, what else is new? So they kind of showed it off in the direct, but then they kind of talked about it after. So they're really actually focusing more, they say, on the lore and the cutscenes in the story. Now, there is story and there is lore and there is stuff in Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know it all or I'm some encyclopedia. I mean, to be honest, when I was playing those two games, I'm in it for the feel. I'm in it for the gameplay. I'm in it for that fast, again, that movement. That is, I think, the hook of it. That, I think, is elite. I think there's very few games that can do it better than Doom. That's why I'm there, okay? So the story, absolutely, to me, is secondary in Doom, which is funny, actually, because story in games is rather important to me. But for Doom, I kind of put it aside. Again, say whatever you want about that. You could say, oh, well, Alex, the story is much better than you give it credit for. I'm sure it can be. I know there are people that are really deep in the story, but they do talk about that this game is going to have it, whether it's through gameplay, so story through gameplay, which, by the way, was the primary, focus of the last two games, right? That's how you got that stuff. But they also talk about cutscenes, and I will say, like, kind of when you're walking into, like, the village, like, there's a couple scenes in the developer direct where it's like, oh yeah, that's like a full-on cutscene. We just didn't get a lot of those, in the last two games. There was some, but it just wasn't, again, the difference, or how different it felt, or how different it looked, that was something that really stood out to me, where it's like, oh, there's going to be, like, full-fledged, kind of cutscenes. Obviously, I mean, like, the mech suit stuff is huge. The dragon stuff is huge. I have, like, PTSD towards, like, Lair. Anybody remember Lair, the PS3 gem? That game was terrible, but, you're on a dragon, and the motion controls are really, really bad. I actually own that game physically, by the way. But anyway, no, I mean, I think they're going to do a great job. Okay, I think those are going to be like breath of fresh air. Not that you necessarily need it, but something to kind of divide up, right? The run and gun, or actually maybe slower running and gunning, and separate it, from itself. Don't think it's actually all that needed, but I think that they're going to do, a great job with it. So I'm very excited. I'm very trusting in them. Maybe that's a bad thing, because oftentimes, modern day games, they can lose trust, or they could crumble people's expectations rather quickly. I have a lot of it. I think this game is going to freaking rock, and just whether it's what we saw or what we heard afterwards, again, like, doubling down on single player is not a bad thing whatsoever. Okay, that actually makes me feel better about it. Just everything we've kind of heard about this game since then, I'm ready. I'm so freaking ready. And I think you can get it. Is it 2 or 3 days early too? Whether it's the pre-order or the deluxe edition or whatever it might be. So there might be ways of actually getting into this game a little bit early. I'll have to look into that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.